Welcome into This Week in Paradise, Surviving Paradise, that is, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses that they're living in a modern-day spiritual paradise. I'm your host here, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, little guy raised as a witness in the 70s and 80s. Warning, as I do, we try to have some fun here. We're trying to heal. We're trying to help others. But each episode features my own brand of sarcasm, humor, experience. Could be serious, could be sad, but there's also some laughs. Please note, never meant to offend. Thank you for being here. I don't watch much TV. I've probably shared that on this show before. I will say I really enjoyed Stranger Things for obvious reasons. It's a take on my generation. Huge fan. I did enjoy Dark, if you haven't watched that on Netflix. And I really enjoyed Midnight Mass. If you haven't seen that, highly recommend it. Lots of subtle messaging about religion, really interesting. If you watch those shows, you get it. But other than those, it's all about football on Sundays for this guy. Otherwise, I just don't watch TV. I rarely watch it. With that said, I was drug into a season of a show I found interesting at best. How many of you have heard of or watched this show, Squid Games? I'm not sure I would recommend this, mostly because this is some really twisted stuff, and I know that's the point. I get the message. But if you're not familiar, it's a South Korean dystopian thriller survivor game show thing. And I mean to tell you, it is really bloody. Bloody, bloody, bloody. In a nutshell, people in financial debt put their lives on the line in these games, these Squid Games, with the hope of winning the prize, which is bazillions of dollars, and it's going to help get them out of debt. The catch, well, there's always a catch. If you lose any of these childlike games, well, you die. That's it. You die. And it's bloody. It's gross. They show it. It's something else. And as you might imagine, there is a lot of people dying in really gross ways in this thing, all in the name of entertainment. Pretty sick stuff. Full confession, I've only seen one season of this thing. It was all I could stomach. But the message to Squid Games wasn't lost on me. There is definitely an underlying thread, a message within each contestant's story as they develop the character. And the message is one of desperation. You get attached to these people, these characters, and you develop some real world feelings about their desperation. And boy, are they desperate. This phrase was really popular in 2021, and it came from this show. The quote was, "The hibiscus flower has bloomed." It was everywhere. If you were into this show, I'm probably a total novice at this. Somebody's going, yeah, dude, I watched every season. You know, it was this phrase that came from a talking doll. And she says in Korean, the hibiscus flower has bloomed in this game of red light, green light. We played it as kids. But in this case, they're grown adults allowed to move when the light turns green, but they have to freeze when the light turns red. And if you don't completely freeze, you end up a bloody dead mess. That's the show. Why would someone sign up for this? Why would these characters do this? It's all about desperation. The article Squid Game and the Psychology of Desperation online said this, quote, "Even after being given the opportunity to walk out of the game safely, but of course empty-handed, after the very first game, most of the survivors ultimately decided to return to the game and continue playing despite having witnessed numerous other contestants being violently killed in the game. One very clear thread runs through the psyches of each of these contestants. Desperation. They needed the money badly, and when they finally saw a chance to right the wrongs that put them in this financial rut in the first place, they took it. Although it sounds counterintuitive, This seemingly illogical behavior is actually a manifestation of human survival instincts when faced with desperate situations. Desperation is a fascinating subject to me. As a guy who was a wannabe athlete at one time as a kid, you learn about desperation early. Whether it's Pop Warner football or Little League baseball, desperation comes into play as you learn how to win and not to lose. You even see it in some of these shameful parents who act like absolute desperate morons when they see their kids losing on the field, or maybe not even playing in the game, or not getting the call from the umpire they think their kid deserves. Desperation. And desperation, when it manifests, is very palpable. As I do, a quote, one of my favorites, from Henry David Thoreau, who wrote, quote, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation," end quote. Thoreau explains that, but men labor under a mistake. The better part of the man is soon plowed into the soil for compost. By a seeming fate commonly called necessity, they are employed. As it says in an old book, laying up treasures with moth and rust will eventually consume and corrupt, and thieves break through and steal. It is a fool's life, as they will find when they get to the end of it, if not before. That comes to us from Thoreau from 1854, page 3. Excellent book, by the way. And it's harsh. Like right on par with that Squid Game show harsh. It is harsh. Desperation may always be present with all of us. We all have a sense of it, but don't go looking for it. It's not the best feeling in the world, folks. I think we know. A lifetime of worry and anxiety are not recommended. So why discuss desperation? Well, for one, it's very easy to see when someone is desperate. And well, as you might imagine, I have an example in mind. A group of men that appear to be so desperate lately that they're willing to throw their own God, his son, and the 8 million professed people that follow them right under the bus. Their desperation is palpable. I believe the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses have entered an era of desperation. And I do mean really, really desperate. Now, I know that a Jehovah's Witness apologist would just claim that this is the opinion of a satanic apostate. So for those folks in particular, I encourage you to consider, for the next few minutes, if you'll stay, my top 3 reasons why I believe the desperation of the 2025 Royal Court of Future Heavenly Kings in upstate New York is palpable. Let's jump in. My very first indicator or point is that they continue, and they've actually ramped it up, to lead with fear and insults, whether intellectually or verbally. I know, I just lost a few people, but please reconsider, stick around. The Bible, as well as these same guys leading Jehovah's Witnesses, seem to have a basic grasp on what it means to be kind. That everything we do, say, or even our actions, all be centered around being kind. Just like Jehovah, minus the many times he killed innocent people in the Bible, of course, put that aside. But I digress. Kindness and love should be the platform from which the governing body leads Jehovah's people. Wouldn't you agree? It seems simple. It's the Bible's message. And in fact, it's kind of theirs. From the Watchtower of September 15th of 1985, pages 10 through 12, the article, "Do You Show Godlike Kindness?" We're told this, quote, "For instance, he indicated that we should be kind even to our enemies." Jesus said, "Continue to love your enemies and to do good and to lend without interest. not hoping for anything back. And your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, because he is kind toward the unthankful and wicked. So if we would show the superior quality of godlike kindness, we will be kind not only to family members, friends, and Christian brothers, but also to those who are unthankful and have shown themselves to be our enemies. Since kindness is part of the fruitage of God's Holy Spirit, Christians submitting to the influence of that Spirit will be kind. In fact, Paul specifically connects godlike holiness with kindness, saying, as God's chosen ones, holy and loved, clothe yourselves with the tender affections of compassion, kindness, end quote. Jehovah's Witnesses, even if you run into one today, believe that the governing body are part of those holy ones mentioned in that reference. So, of course, those guys, the governing body, set an example of what it means to be kind, right? Is that reasonable to say? We should expect to see the following from the most important 11 men on earth, from their book, Draw Close to Jehovah, chapter 30, page 303, paragraph 9. They told us, quote, love is kind. Kindness is shown by helpful acts and considerate words. Love moves us to look for ways to show kindness, especially towards those most in need. When we take the initiative to show kindness in such ways, we demonstrate the genuineness of our love, end quote. And you couple that reference with the 85 Watchtower I just read, you'll note that includes the unthankful, the wicked, and our enemies. Needless to say, people who may have been a Jehovah's Witness but decided they wasn't for them anymore. You're still to treat them with kindness and love. Their words, not mine. And so I'd say here that consider the only comment a Jehovah's Witness should consider when it comes to the 11 guys in upstate New York, the governing body. They don't deal in fear. We just heard them say that love and kindness should be the platform by which they live their lives, how they treat others, even the worst of the worst people, even those who may have left Jehovah's Witnesses. But they, because they are the examples of love and kindness, they most certainly don't deal in fear, right? At least according to what the Bible says, their book. Consider one of my favorite scriptures, one that played a key role in my own awakening from this religion. It's from 1 John chapter 4 and verse 18 of the New World Translation, which says this, quote, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts fear out, because fear restrains us. Indeed, the one who is fearful has not been made perfect in love. End quote. There it is. That's it from the Bible. There is no fear in love, folks. You heard it. Fear restrains people, and they can't be made perfect. So my first point of proof that the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses are drowning in desperation in 2025 is the very obvious fact that everything they currently teach, that they currently share, promote, and demand of Jehovah's Witnesses, there's no denying it, it's rooted in fear. And while anyone associated with the religion may think that's obvious, I'm saying they've been ramping up the fear to an all-new level in recent years. Fear that includes them insulting the intelligence of the 8 million people that follow them. Even as they're building a multi-million-dollar movie studio so they can bring you this fear in high definition and surround sound, they lead with fear in all of their content. And no, it's not new, but the medium by which a Jehovah's Witness takes it all in, it is most definitely new. In the last 10 years alone, Jehovah's Witnesses have been fed a steady diet of violence, death, warnings, secret door knocks, bunkers, and fear, all on the big screen. Nothing screams desperation like motivation by fear. Fear that we're told has no part in love, from their book. According to BetterUp.com, we're told this, quote, fear is one of our most uncomfortable emotions, which is why, for better or worse, it's one of our most powerful motivators. Fear is uncomfortable, so we naturally try to move away from fear and closer to our comfort zone. Fear motivates us by compelling us to act. Our behavior might anticipate fear to avoid the consequence or the risk, or we might behave differently while we actively feel fear to limit the uncomfortable sensation, end quote. Yeah, I think we all can relate. Despite the Bible itself saying there's no fear in love, the governing body has made it one of its favorite tools. We've talked in length on this crazy show about movies showing smoldering dead bodies with their eyes open, movies showing Jehovah's Witnesses being surrounded by men pointing machine guns at them in open fields, sisters succumbing to careers and turning into pillars of salt like Lot's wife, newborn babies being called enemies of God, fear of being shunned by the people you love, fear of drowning like they showed the kids in the Caleb and Sophia video with my guy Noah, fear of disobedience leading to losing everything, fear of your sexuality, fear of higher education, fear. And in almost every single video, it's a desperate plea to obey the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. That's the message. Imagine scaring a young kid out of giving them, their ice cream money. That's in one of their videos. Or telling them they can't be Jehovah's friend if they play with a wizard toy. That too is in the kids' Caleb and Sophia videos. They also show my guy Noah drowning because he didn't obey Jehovah, and right alongside him is his family and the animals drowning. It's in a Caleb and Sophia video. And I'm here to say that all of it points to a group of men who are desperate to remain in control. And fear is the tool of desperate men. Author and noted inspiring speaker guy Napoleon Hill once said, quote, fear is the tool of a man-made devil, end quote. Yeah. An odd choice of words when you consider applying that to the governing body. Fear often masks desperation. It is the tool of the desperate. In some cases, that's a good thing. You can really encourage your neighbors to get out of a burning house. You can get in there and get desperate and pull them out of bed. Let's get out of here. But it takes on a new sensation of desperation when applied in ways like this. From examining the scriptures daily, March 4th, 2012, the governing body said, quote, however, we cannot hope to acquire a good relationship with Jehovah if we ignore those whom Jesus has appointed to care for his belongings. Without the assistance of the faithful and discreet slave, we would neither understand the full import of what we read in God's word, nor know how to apply it. End quote. Yeah, you can't be Jehovah's friend without us, says the governing body. The Watchtower of July 15th, 1974, page 441, says, quote, the point is that Christians have implicit trust in their Heavenly Father. They do not question what he tells them through his written word and organization, end quote. On and on it goes from them, the 11 guys in New York. I'm here saying that those guys and their desperation are palpable. They're desperately trying to hold on to control of this. One quick search yields the following information. Are you ready for this if you're a Jehovah's Witness? You can find this online yourself. A couple of tidbits from one Google search. Here we go. One, a 2008 Pew Forum study found a low retention rate among those raised as Jehovah's Witnesses, with only about 37% continuing to identify with the denomination. How about another? 66% of U.S. adults raised as Jehovah's Witnesses no longer identify with the group. And another, some sources suggest that around 250,000 Jehovah's Witnesses leave the organization every year, though this figure doesn't include those who are not counted. Couple more, an analysis of Watchtower Society reports indicates that Jehovah's Witnesses have experienced declining growth rates since 2010, particularly in recruiting new members. Another, the annual growth rate of 0.63% between 2018 and 2023 was slower than the global population growth rate of 0.95%. And finally, research also indicates that 63% of children born into the faith leave, representing a loss of over 474,046 members in a 5-year period between 2018 and 2023. I'll stop there. My generation of Jehovah's Witnesses, when leaving or had left or trying to stick it out, we didn't have any acronyms. This guy, showed my age when I needed to learn from other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses what a PMO and a POMO were. I had no clue what that stood for. But with so many people leaving, doubting these guys, or silently playing along so they don't lose friends and family, the guys in New York have gotten increasingly desperate, folks. And desperate times call for desperate measures, including full-scale movie sets showing how any deviation from what they tell you to do is going to lead to your death. And in the interim, immediate shunning from your family and your friends. They've got all the answers and none of them are good. Despite apostates calling it out all over the internet, they have learned nothing from their past publications showing death and mayhem under their future hands. Because they're going to be involved. Never forget that. They will be involved. Now they do it with movies. The desperation is palpable on these guys. You can see it in everything they're doing as of late. They desperately try to motivate and control by means of fear. And as 1 John 4 said, that just isn't possible when you love people. Fear and love don't mix, folks. They don't mix. And that isn't some crazy apostate opinion. That's the Bible. 1 John, their book. So when you see all this fear, when you see it now in video format, when you see it in music videos for the kids, when you see it in Caleb and Sophia videos for the really young kids, all that fear comes from another place. It doesn't come from love. Even if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you can't deny this. And their fear and how they motivate with it is palpable because it's rooted in desperation. I want to jump to a second point that I believe points to how desperate these guys are. It's called rebranding. I've covered this on the show before. You're seeing it in real time on virtually a weekly basis at this point. Just a couple of years ago, I predicted on this silly show that Jehovah's Witnesses would undergo a rebrand. And I'm not exactly a rocket scientist. It's just glaringly obvious, folks. In a desperate attempt to target unborn children and new generations of loyal followers, the governing body has set out to make current Jehovah's Witnesses Forget all about that silly stuff from the past. Forget all about their failures. Forget all about their lies. Forget about all the damage done. Forget about the lives lost. Have you ever considered why truth would ever need to be rebranded? I speak here directly to Jehovah's Witnesses. Why would something that is true, that is rooted in truth, that is factual, why would it ever need to be rebranded? Why would you need to shine it up, make it look different? In Jesus' own words from John chapter 18 and verse 37 in the New World Translation, we're told, quote, "For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is on the side of the truth listens to my voice." End quote. And when it comes to Jesus Christ of the Bible, that virtually almost everyone on earth knows, aside from select pockets of populations, truth is apparently evolving and changing constantly. That in itself is an oxymoron, folks. It's either true or it's not. A truth that started with Jesus, a guy in sandals, talking to people one-on-one as he walked through the Middle East. There is not a single reference to him adapting the times and giving his brand, or should I say religion, a fresh look every few decades. He didn't do it. He didn't rebrand. But here we are. A person that left Jehovah's Witnesses in the 1980s would barely recognize this religion. Its culture, its meetings, its weekly schedules, its teachings. Somebody who left in 1980 would barely know this was Jehovah's Witnesses in 2025. Why is the truth constantly changing? Is Jesus the kind of guy that adapts to the times, all in an effort to get people to buy what he's selling today? You see, I seem to remember this. It says, quote, "Buy truth and never sell it. Also wisdom and discipline and understanding," end quote. That's from Proverbs 23:23 of his book. And in the last 10 to 15 years, the governing body's desperation has been most evident in how they're rebranding this religion. Rebranding your product, folks, it's often rooted in desperation. The desperate desire to maintain market share or control. As an obvious reminder, no publishers, no donations equal no Watchtower Society, by extension, no governing body. It truly is that simple. And when you consider how this organization is truly hemorrhaging members and having scant success in drawing any new members, they are desperately trying to rebrand. Where do I even begin with this one? Because I've covered it, if not even subtly, many times. Whether it impacts their bank account or their sense of control, there has never been a time like the past 10 to 15 years in Jehovah's Witnesses. There's never been a time like this. I'm not going to say that they haven't rebranded before. They have. That's very clear. It didn't, in the 80s, it didn't look anything like Chuck Russell's time. It didn't look anything like Judge Joe Rutherford's time. And it was starting to lose Nathan Norris stuff. They've always rebranded for the times. But how does that sync up with Jesus? Whether it impacts their bank account or their sense of control over people, there has just never been a time like the 10, 15 years, the last 10 to 15 years. According to Heaven's 11, Jesus has never been more interested in releasing new light like he has during the last 10 to 15 years. Would you not agree? Again, you could have left in 2000 or the 90s. You would barely recognize this religion right now. And all of that includes throwing the current generation, a few party favors just to keep the natives happy. and to get them basically to shut up. Do you remember that moment when you realize that if you nag mom and dad enough, they just get so sick of it, they kind of cave in, they let you off your restrictions or your grounding, or they let you eat that other piece of cake, or they buy you that thing you've been begging for that they couldn't afford, if you just nag them enough. Mom, I'm sorry. They probably didn't let you stay out all night or eat pizza every night for dinner, but they did find a way to bump back your curfew, and they caved and gave you pizza every Friday night. Welcome to what the governing body is giving Jehovah's Witnesses in 2025. It is obvious for anyone with brain synapses firing that they're letting go and giving them the easy stuff right now. They're handing out concessions. Let me ask those who were raised in this religion what you used, to identify Jehovah's Witnesses. If somebody said Jehovah's Witnesses, what were they known for? What were our calling cards as a Jehovah's Witness from childhood on to adulthood? What were the things? I'm a Jehovah's Witness. What were the first few things out of someone's mouth that heard that? As you consider a few examples, your own examples, tell me again how this is not proof of deep desperation as Jesus Christ, King of Jehovah's Witnesses, goes on an all-time new light dump, because that's what he's doing right now. He wouldn't even go into depth on explaining the fall of Jerusalem to his apostles when they asked him. He gave them a few things to think about. That's about it. You remember the apostles, by the way, were the original governing body according to this governing body. But now, well, here is just a few things that Jesus apparently has been really concerned with as he rebrands his religion during the last 10 to 15 years. I'll start from the top. There was the beard prohibition. We got that new light in 2024. Why? We don't know. Jesus just had it on his mind, so he fixed it. Grow that body hair, gentlemen. We've got women wearing dresses, now wearing pants. Yes, women's fashion was a big deal to Jesus. We got that new light in 2024. Toss those razors, and what is Nair anyway, ladies? Who uses Nair? That burns. It's over. You can wear pants. We got the loosening of rules around neckties and suit coats. They're optional now. We got that new light in 2024. It was at this point that I thought, wow, as Jesus rebrands, he seems to be really focused on dress and grooming. Apparently he's been a fashion maven all along. Who knew? But then we got some big ones. After well over a century of nonsense and very strict rules that have cost people their lives, folks, we got some big ones during the rebrand. We've got the new understanding of the faithful and discreet slave. That was new light in 2012 at the annual meeting. Would you look at that? In 2012, we learned that the faithful and discreet slave parable, prophecy according to them, is now only the 11 guys on the governing body. All those other anointed people, well, they get forever off now. They don't have to participate, think, or anything. They're just kind of there. They're kind of off to the side. In 2024, we also got new light for disfellowshipped people. Who knew that after decades of people ruining their families, harming kids, driving them to unspeakable things, that you can now greet a disfellowship person or invite them to a meeting if it doesn't bother you? New light during the rebrand in 2024. I look back on silly things that would shock old-timers, like Watchtower and Awake magazines. New light in 2008 and again in 2013. Jesus decided to make watchtowers and serve up 2 different types. Remember that one? 2 different spiritual meals depending on what, you can stomach. He made a public edition and then he made a study edition. Now, why would he do that? The public edition was reduced from 32 pages to 16. Less food, but maybe he wants us to watch our spiritual diet. Not sure. Jesus had less to say with each waking day since 2008. Now it's only printed 3 times a year. For the people it's written for, those they're trying to save from Armageddon. Public edition studied it. Insane. All began in 2008. And who can forget during the rebrand when Jesus got his own website? New Light starting in 1997. The internet went from Satan's playground, according to the governing body for many years, to Jesus getting his very own swing set on the playground. They launched watchtower.org. Who remembers that? Who remembers? And in 2012, they redesigned it all to their favorite logo and new URL, jdub.org. And all pretense of scholarship, teaching, collecting publications for your bookshelf and more went out the window. Everything's online now. Jesus, during this great rebrand, shall I say desperate rebrand, has a URL. And most Jehovah's Witnesses no longer even pretend to understand the Bible, prophecies, dates, or anything else, or even their own doctrines. When you ask them at your local book cart, they're going to point you to a blue logo. Their website. Just, like the apostles would have done in the first century. And I'm here to tell you, it's coming during this rebrand. Be on the lookout for social media. I see a YouTube page coming soon. And then there's the most recent stuff. Stuff that is so incredibly important in these last days of the last days of the last days, according to Stephen Lett. Things like your cutlery and glasses. Jesus was concerned that you could toast again and you could clink glasses at a wedding or a happy hour. New Light in 2025. Imagine how stressful this has been for him up there in heaven. Desperate times call for desperate measures. All of this thrown out as crumbs to get the masses to shut up. And while there are many more flashes of New Light I could talk about here, and I should say read Desperate Rebranding, my favorite has to be this one. From the 2023 annual meeting in a talk by a noted liar, scratch that, rebrander, Jeffrey Jackson of the governing body, Jehovah's Witnesses were told something that rendered the entire religion a waste of your time. King Jackson said into the camera, quote, "Once the Great Tribulation starts, is there a door of opportunity for non-believers to actually join us? What have we said in the past? No, there will not be another time. What about unbelieving relatives, disfellowshipped ones? Could some of them, once they see the destruction of Babylon the Great, decide that what Jehovah's Witnesses are saying is correct? Could they take a stand for the truth if they changed their hearts? Would we be disappointed? We can't be dogmatic. It's that last-minute repentance. As we look in the time chart, we see that this is a time period before the final judgment. We still will face the attack of Magog. Our preaching work now is of utmost importance. The answer? We will have to wait and see. But there is a possibility some can make a stand for the truth. End quote. Earth-shattering. Earth-shattering New Light that renders Jehovah's Witnesses, the faith, the buildings, the lost years, all the potential, the lives, a complete waste of time. You see, when you're hemorrhaging members and can't attract new ones, you just don't have many new converts lined up anymore. You desperately change the very core, reason the religion exists. The very reason we are all still here on this planet in 2025. In other words, if someone can repent and plan on dinner dates with my guy Noah in paradise at the last minute during the Great Tribulation, why in the world would you live the austere life of a Jehovah's Witness now? Why? Why would a person not just wait until the governing body truly are the last men standing? Religion is gone. It was them all along. You can then say you're sorry and punch your ticket to paradise. Why would a person not go live their life? Date people, have sex, go to college, get that blood transfusion if needed, eat that birthday cake. Why wouldn't they do it if they can say they're sorry in the closing seconds? Why are we preaching? Why the literature? Why the movie studio? Why the governing body? What all of this means is that Jesus and his Father, they've been mismanaging Jehovah's Witnesses for the better part of a century. He simply sat there in heaven and watched Jehovah's Witnesses teach people lies. He's been watching us do it. Manipulating people into being like them, even though Jesus apparently, one of their best words, never even cared about neckties. He never did. And it's odd. It's also odd, considering his book says this at Hebrews 13 and verse 8 of the New World Translation, quote, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever, end quote. And I got to tell you, I looked in the New World Translation. If you're a witness, I looked. I couldn't find a footnote saying until he became king of Jehovah's Witnesses. Then he started initiating rebrands to everything he'd done before. It's a lot easier for someone to accept the fact that generations overlap magically and that you may now face mortality. You may actually die after all. Or you're childless because you obeyed them for decades. Or that you're shunning your only child. Or any other number of things as a Jehovah's Witness. It becomes easier. It becomes palatable, you see, as you lather in the beard oil on your chin. Or you ladies, no longer late to anything because you don't have to shave your legs last minute because you can just wear pants now. Or you no longer have to watch the clock at all and count field service time. You can now just raise your drink to that toast at the next wedding. I mean, hell, you can accept that they've been wrong on every single thing they've ever said because now you don't even have to read or understand the Bible. You just need to know how to push a book cart and wear comfortable shoes for a morning of standing. That's it. It's easier to accept the tough stuff when you get lots of little breadcrumbs during a desperate rebrand. It's human nature. What have they really given up? Simply stated, if you haven't been paying attention, they look a lot like other churches now. They look a lot like the bad guys. They got a looser dress code. They no longer tell you where to grow hair on your body. Preaching, who cares? Just tell us if you think about preaching. Just put it on just check a box. That's good enough. Want to say hi to your own child who left the organization? Well, that's okay. That's up to you now. Low-hanging fruit given to the people of Jehovah's Witnesses out of desperation. Not one of these desperate changes threaten the one thing that they will never give up: their power. This is a lot like someone letting you get pineapple on your pizza. They may not like it, but they can always pick it off. So go ahead, have some pineapple on your pizza, right? By the way, I like that. Hope you do too. But no rebrand, born in desperation is complete without, I don't know, replacing kings. That's a big thing too, right? Even those born in the 1970s or 1980s, 50 plus years after they said there would be no one else added to the heavenly court. And if you think you might be someone who's going to heaven and one of us, you have mental problems. That's right. It was in the Watchtower. Look it up. But for those that think a good rebranding, sisters wearing pants, and no more time slips will be just the rebranding Jehovah ordered, let me assure you of something. It gives hope for some of the rest of us. Rebranding isn't always successful, folks. From a noted firm, Sametz Blackstone, a leader in helping organizations rebrand, they said this, quote, brands that have their genesis in reaction, desperation, manipulation, or provocation rarely find a positive footing. And even worse, can create more of an uphill battle for organizations seeking to connect with their constituents, clients, and customers, end quote. Uh-oh. Did I read that correctly? He said, quote, desperation and manipulation rarely find positive footing, end quote. And I'm here to say I think there are many of us that are counting on that as we watch the governing body desperately rebrand the religion. Well, there are many more things I could point to proving their desperation. I'm going to narrow it down to just one more. I'm going to give you three. Here's the third. Jesus Christ of the Bible has a legal team, lawyers, that he has appointed to constantly fight for his earthly organization. Now, most old-timers will say, yeah, Jesus has always had lawyers here on earth, and while that is incredibly ironic to even say out loud, it's true. When I was a Jehovah's Witness, even as an elder, I always found this troubling, but accepted it just like I accepted a 500-year-old celibate man could wrestle silverback gorillas, and he inspired the modern-day cruise industry. I had the same belief system. But this never set well with me. Lawyers? Legal teams? It feels desperate. I seem to recall Jesus showing up without a lawyer on several occasions and facing groups of people, including the Sanhedrin. I don't recall him asking for a court-appointed attorney when he faced Pontius Pilate. Hell, he didn't even make sure his cousin, John the Baptist, had a lawyer, letting him sit there and rot in jail and then eventually take one for the team so that we all knew that we couldn't go to Tommy or Susie's birthday party in the future. Remember how that's applied? Yeah, no lawyers. But okay, you say, look, it was the 20th century, and Watchtower leadership has always been very open about having a legal team, going to court, and locking in lawyers. To which I would say, yep, you're right, they sure have. In fact, back in my day, many of us were well-versed in the 1950s publication, Defending and Legally Establishing the Good News. Remember that one? I believe it's been updated, didn't check. And that is where the desperation begins. You see, Jehovah's Witnesses mostly ignore the fact that they have a legal team. You're not going to walk up to a witness book card and talk about their legal department. Most of them won't have a clue what to tell you. I venture a guess that many have not watched the video currently on the website under the /organization/Bethel. The video's titled Tour of the Legal Department of World Headquarters. So why do I associate having a legal department, lawyers and stuff with desperation? See if you can spot it from the following section in the original publication from 1950, Defending and Legally Establishing the Good News. It's under the heading Purpose of Booklet, where they said this, quote, the purpose of this booklet is to give advice to all of Jehovah's Witnesses and others who want this truthful information, so that each of us may reflect accurately the holdings of the courts in the democratic lands. Such counsel will help us show to all officials, police, and courts that they should allow our work to go unhampered. It is also to aid judges, lawyers, and officials to avoid violations of the fundamental law of imposing restrictions contrary to the constitutional guarantees of freedom of speech, press and worship, and law of Almighty God. Consideration of these precepts, which have been written into the law of the land by the courts, may lead the officials and police to recognize our freedom guaranteed by Jehovah God. End quote. Pretty wordy. But did you catch it? Did you notice anything that was missing when you talk about Jehovah's Witnesses and legal things? If you weren't paying too much attention, or I'm just being a goofball here, you see, this booklet highlighted the Watchtower's success in winning court cases and overturning arrests, all centered around one thing: the right to preach. In fact, Jehovah's Witnesses are often given credit for promoting the freedom of religion and the right to teach during the 20th century, meeting with the Supreme Court on multiple occasions. So naturally, Jehovah's Witnesses are going to point to this as proof that Jesus has always had a legal team and Jesus needs lawyers. Don't you see it? But again, it was all about the right to preach and freedom of religion. Did you notice what was missing? The legal team back at World Headquarters today in 2025 is the fastest growing department in Jesus' organization. Why, you ask? Haven't they already established the right to preach in most countries? Do they need a growing legal team to fight the same countries that have been under bans since the dawn of time? Do they need lawyers to go to communist countries, Islamic countries, totalitarian regimes? Why are they growing so fast? To me, this might be the single greatest proof of the governing body's desperation. This isn't a case of the apostles or Christ himself standing before world leaders and defending their belief system. The legal team isn't growing to open up opportunities for more book carts in banned countries. The legal department is growing and under fire because Jehovah's Witnesses are in trouble in many countries for many other things. The greatest one being the abuse of children. Jehovah's legal team is adding lawyers to fight lawsuit after lawsuit brought to them by now grown abuse victims. The governing body is sending baptized men to legal school due to court orders against shunning. See Norway. Jesus needs lawyers so other countries don't join Norway in taking away government cash that funnels into their bank account. And how well versed are most people in real estate law, by the way? You're going to need one of those lawyers when you have assets in the billions. But you'll note, none of this, nor this legal team, are focused on opening up the preaching work. The governing body covers all of this. They cover all of it in a desperate attempt to fool Jehovah's Witnesses. Ask one. They won't know any of this. Don't believe me? Take a look at the July 2025, this month, folks, the Watchtower Study Edition, which features an article on a great man of faith. In fact, he's the overseer of the legal department. His name is Brother Philip Brumley. And yes, what incredible timing to have his life experience in the July 2025 Watchtower. Why could that be? The article, and I encourage you to go read it, is a whitewashed effort to make this man look like a man of faith. And I'm sure it's a coincidence, because this very man This very Philip Brumley, the overseer to the legal department, is currently fighting a $154,000 court fine in Montana for lying to the judge about the Watchtower Society. Oh, and lying about the governing body, where he claimed that the Watchtower Society of Pennsylvania was just a printing organization, including copyrights on things like the Bible. Do I need to go there? Didn't Jehovah? Never mind. During that period, the legal team representing the victims there in Montana were able to obtain several key documents from outside sources. Documents that strongly supported their argument that during the 1970s and the 1980s, my Jen, Watchtower Society of Pennsylvania was in fact equivalent, and we all know this, to the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. Despite him filing two different affidavits, this great man of faith, the overseer to the legal department, featured in the Watchtower this month as a swell guy on par with my guy Noah, well, he was caught lying to the court. Lying. And he's now appealing the fines as we speak. Needless to say, not exactly an example of legally establishing the good news, huh? Not exactly on par. And before 8 million people find out about this, the governing body is printing an article on the very same guy caught lying, with nary a mention of what he just did or what he's fighting, just his loving story of becoming a lawyer for Jesus Christ. Desperation. And frankly, the vast majority of Jehovah's Witnesses don't know a damn thing about this. And the governing body wants to keep it that way. That's why they have a great article on this swell fella, Philip Brumley. By the way, the court case is about child abuse. Yeah. According to the Sokolov law firm in the United States alone, they said this, quote, over 1,800 reports of child abuse by more than 1,000 suspected abusers within the Jehovah's Witnesses have been documented by the organization itself, according to an investigation, end quote. Ugh. And I can't imagine why the legal department is the fastest growing department in upstate New York. I can say confidently it's not growing to ensure more book carts can be placed at your local park. None of this supports the pretense that this is a spiritual organization. And with the governing body putting people through law school on your donated dime, it's time for Jehovah's Witnesses to ask a few questions. Ask. Desperation is really rooted in one thing: a loss of hope. Desperation is a survival response. Therefore, as I stated, it's not always bad. There can be a good time to be desperate. And in this case, I encourage anyone interested in what Jehovah's Witnesses truly are to act with desperation to get the answers. Don't ignore what is happening in front of your face. The spiritual teacher Muji once said, quote, if you are curious, you will learn. If you are desperate, you will discover. End quote. I encourage anyone associated with Jehovah's Witnesses to foster the desperation of discovery. Please don't be afraid to find the truth. It's in your face. With all of that said, back to the most important 11 men on earth, the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. These were but a few examples of their desperation. Their desperation is most definitely palpable. There's an interesting quote that I think applies here. It comes to us from a rather controversial source where he said, quote, "There are no desperate situations. There are only desperate people," end quote. That was said by Heinz Guderian. He was Hitler's personal advisor on the Eastern Front and became closely associated with the Nazis. A man and a group who believed in controlling everyone or wiping them out. There are no desperate situations. There are only desperate people. Foremost among them are the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. I want to thank you for joining me this week. Wherever you may be desperately well.